So, hey everyone. Today I'm gonna walk you through a master study I did of a Jules Bastien-Lepage painting. Yes, oui, oui. There are gonna be three parts to this. The first part, which is the video you're seeing right now, is me doing an underdrawing in Krita. In part number two, I'm gonna import the drawing I do here into Photoshop and start painting on top. And then the third part will be me refining everything in Clip Studio Paint because I find Clip Studio way nicer when it comes to subtle rendering and that sort of thing. And yeah, I hope this is useful to at least someone on this planet. I'm just gonna be watching my recording with you together and just share my thoughts here and there. Oh, also, I want to apologize in advance to all of the cuts you will see in this recording. I was kind of all over the place when recording this because I was also teaching a friend just some basic drawing stuff with this master study. So I had to randomly pause and explain things to her. So apologies for that in advance. And yeah, let's get started. So you've already been seeing me laying down some basic construction lines just to search for proportions. I like to do this in the beginning just to make sure that everything is in the right place when I lay in some more committal shapes. It just helps me stay organized. And I should also probably mention why I'm using Krita for this and not Photoshop. And the only reason I'm using Krita here is the Sketching Chrome Thin Brush. I think that's the right one. If it isn't, I'll just edit that in later. But this brush is so amazing. It's so flexible. You can see me here laying in some thicker lines with it. It has this really strange property where you can create super thin lines, but if you scribble over the same area and don't lift your pen off of the tablet, it has this magnetic property where it connects all of your lines and then creates these bigger, choppier shapes. So it's kind of like drawing with a pencil and a paintbrush at the same time, which makes it very efficient for me because I don't constantly have to change brush size or opacity, or I don't have to switch between brushes. So that's very nice. I wouldn't call this brush very intuitive. It's kind of strange because it's so different. So it takes some time getting used to, but I still urge anyone to try out this brush. I also haven't changed any settings on it. I've just slightly turned down the opacity and I've turned off the color jitter in the brush settings, but other than that, if you download Krita for free and you select this brush, it will work exactly the same way as it does here in this recording. Oh, and here you can see me just drawing a simple small schematic of her head. I think I was showing my friend the perspective of her head, showing that it's below the horizon line and her head is tilted slightly to her right, because we can see that in the alignment of her eyebrows and her eyelids. And also that the head is slightly tilting forward, although that's more obvious, and just blocking in the most basic masses so that when I add detail on top of this foundation, it's hopefully in the right place. Also, I drew in her eye sockets and the division between her front and her side plane. These are, I mean, if you've done portrait drawing for a while, these are just like some basic things that more or less every single anatomy or portrait teacher tells you about. So you can just look up stuff from Proko or Stephen Bauman or Steven Zapata. Steve Houston, all these people are amazing at teaching structure and portraiture. So I recommend that you check those guys out. And yeah, I just moved up the schematic I did um, to the upper left-hand corner, and I'm just gonna keep it there and in the back of my mind while I continue working. Also, you've probably noticed that not every stroke is jet black, like there's opacity to my strokes. So if I'm careful and I turn up my brush size, then I can also lay in some very smooth gradations. So I can even in this early drawing stage, I could even push this drawing even more and start laying in gradations and just doing some subtle rendering. And then I can use that as a jumping off point when I paint in Photoshop. So that is very nice. Normally, I wouldn't actually start off with doing a underdrawing like this. Most of the times, I just start straight away with color and shape in Photoshop, and then just finish the painting there. And maybe I import it into Krita or into Clip Studio to do some adjustments or some final touches, just to vary up the texture. But this is actually quite new for me doing an underdrawing. But I gotta say, I I actually kind of like it. The nice thing is that if you have this drawing figured out, you don't have to do everything at the same time because you've already figured out the proportions, mostly at least. Because I've had so many situations where I start painting directly in Photoshop and I'm like, I don't know, 6 hours into painting and it doesn't even look like a face and the eye is completely in the wrong place and nothing works. And I'm like, oh, fuck. And I get super anxious and I just want to give up and die. But this way, if I already have my drawing and I know it's pretty solid, then I know, okay, at least I have this. At least this is working. Now I can fully focus on things like value control or edge work, and I don't have to worry too much about the proportions because I've already figured that out in the drawing stage. So it's a very, I guess, non-digital way of working. It's very traditional, but I can see the appeal. I might continue working this way. Maybe like for client work when you need to have like a reliable drawing process. You can't just kind of mess around and see, oh, experiment, because you're experimenting with someone else's money. You can't do that. Also, when blocking in the hair, you can see that I tried not to focus on all of the detailed little strands I see in Lepage's painting. I try to find groupings of hair and then block those in first so that is all in the right place, as I said before, that the structure is solid. And then if I find that the structure works, then I can add, small details and little separate strands of hair, and everything will fit nicely on top of what I already have, and it will just strengthen the image and not kill it. It's not going to be like Craig Mullins always says, lipstick on a pig. When you add a bunch of detail onto something that structurally just doesn't work, and then it just looks even worse. Like those drawings you do when you're a kid and you try to do this hyper realist style to impress your parents, but because you don't understand the structure, it just doesn't work. Like the more eyelashes you add, it just still doesn't work, and you're like, what the heck? Well, it's because the structure isn't solid and stuff isn't in the right place, and then the detail just doesn't save it. So doing an underdrawing beforehand does help me stay organized. And then also later when painting, I don't have to worry about proportions so much. Like I know these proportions that I'm drawing right now, they're not perfect, but they're pretty close, so I don't have to worry about proportions too much later on when painting. I can just focus on value control and edge work. I don't have to focus too much on, okay, is this eye even in the right place? What am I doing? Okay, I guess now I'm just explaining something to my friend, flourishing my mouse. Okay, I think I'm saying something about the ambient occlusion that we can see under her chin and under her eyelids and also in her ear. Those are like the only really dark spots in her face. Like these diffuse lighting situations where you don't have direct sunlight, but you have kind of an overcast skybox, skylight kind of thing because of the cloudy day. Like that diffuse sort of lighting is super difficult for me. It's like very subtle. Um, I find a direct light source to be way easier to paint. But hey, I guess that's why I'm also painting this study, is to challenge myself and try out something new. You can still see me still working on the hair, trying to abstractly block in those uh, hair shadow shapes. Just doing my best. I think I know that there isn't a lot of information there to begin with, so I'm probably just going to imply a lot of it later with texture, so I'm not too worried about that area. But you know, you still have to put it in. Yeah, but I can tell that her head is way too long. I have this tendency in general that maybe it's a preference, but I like to elongate features. I tend to draw things too long, too elongated. Like I often have the problem that the nose in my portrait is too long, or the neck is too long, the legs are too long, the I don't know, the fingers are too long. I guess it's the better mistake to make because if you make things too short, that just looks really weird. I think you can kind of get away with making things too long, but still, I just kind of have to remind myself that I had that tendency and then overcorrect or overcompensate, which, funnily enough, I didn't do in this painting. Like, I can tell that her neck is too long here, but yeah, whatever. The focus is on her face. Nobody really cares about the neck, anyways. I'm constantly flipping the canvas, if you couldn't tell already. You know, these are just basic drawing tips that you'll also probably hear from TikTok. You know, oh, flip the canvas to check your proportions. Use Liquify to quickly change parts of your drawing. You know, basic stuff. Maybe I'm using Liquify a little bit too much. Maybe I'm almost abusing it. Who knows? Let me know in the comments, the 3 people in the comments. Am I abusing Liquify? Am I using it too much? Probably. But yeah, I think the drawing is almost finished. Oh yeah, I added some subtle halftone on her cheeks to just imply the darker shade because of her flush. Lepage really exaggerated that flush. Like she almost looks sick. But it looks cool. It's a nice color. But yeah, I think the the drawing process is almost over. In part 2, I already said this in the beginning, is I'm gonna import this into Photoshop and then put a clipping mask on top of this drawing, and then I can also paint inside the shapes I drew here and just use that as a, as a jumping off point. And I can hopefully talk more about lighting and gradation and edges in that part than I did here. I hope I didn't ramble too much and you actually got something out of this. But yeah. All in all, the drawing is decent. It does its job. It's not like the most amazing drawing ever. It just kind of, captures the proportions I wanted, and it serves its purpose. And I know you're probably not gonna see a lot of this show through in the final anyways, so I'm just using this as a guide for my painting, and that's about it. So it doesn't have to be super pretty. To be honest, the sketching chrome thin brush doesn't work too well when it comes to this context, because as you can see, we're trying to paint a very soft face, with very soft features, very delicate. And the brush is like, this brush isn't very delicate. It's quite contrasty. It creates a lot of small, choppy shapes, which don't really fit the aesthetic. So I'm kind of fighting against the tool here at this point. But if I'm, drawing a cool character, or I want to draw nice armor with spikes or exaggerate proportions, then this sort of brush really lends itself handy. Yeah, adding a small heart there at the end, and we're finished. So thanks for watching. That's it for now. Part 2 is coming soon. Bye bye.